Rolling, rolling. Hello, hello. Okay, I think I'm good.
Rolling.
9/11 was an inside job. All right, we're
This motherfucker is obsessed with
Hello?
9/11.
I'm not, frankly.
Brandon, do you think we should be watching 9/11 movies in October during the spooky season?
It is scary. It's a scary event that happened.
Do you think we should be watching real life horror movies during Halloween? Is that
You mean
distasteful?
you mean documentary?
Yeah,
Real life. Let's just call them real life movies from now on.
They're called actualities.
real life. No, like there could be biopics. Those are real life movies because it's like things that actually happened. You know.
You want to
No?
watch only fiction in October? Is that what you're getting at?
I don't know. I'm just saying, is it appropriate or not? You know.
I mean, I don't really mind either way.
Like,
All movies all the time. I don't even care if you want to watch a Christmas movie in June. That's the kind of person I am.
That's fucked up. That is so fucked up.
But we're not here to
the
talk about
opposite.
Christmas.
We're not here to talk about Christmas. We're here to talk about spooky movies, scary movies. That's why I started this whole thing. Welcome back to Stack episode 92, everybody. We're back. It's the Halloween-a-thon. We got another horror topic for you all today. One that I feel like I'm surprised we didn't talk about sooner, because I feel like I myself am a big fan of this genre. And I feel like you two are as well, because I just think it's one of the most coolest, most epicest, most intriguing subgenres of horror of all time. We're talking cosmic horror today. Now, what is cosmic horror? What is this genre? I feel like people throw around cosmic horror a lot, but I don't know. I don't think they know like what they actually mean by it. You know, it's not. A lot of things. It's not just space. You know, space can be cosmic horror. You know, but to really break down what cosmic horror is, I feel like you have to go look back at sort of the author who really popularized it. That is Mr. H.P. Lovecraft. Say what you will about the man's character, you know. That dude knew how to write some scary stuff, you know. And it really popularized exploring the fear of really the unknown, the undescribable, the overwhelming, and sort of the imperceivable that exists in our world, you know? So I feel like a lot of the films we're going to talk about today are films that sort of delve into these topics of showcasing things that we couldn't even fathom, you know? Exploring mindsets that we couldn't even fathom, making us feel universally in dread. You know, the existential dread is a big topic of cosmic horror. And that's what I love. There's so many good cosmic horror movies. We already picked so many for past stacks.
This was a hard one.
Oh man.
I disagree.
It was hard. But I'm glad that I am going to be sharing some films. But I just got to shout out some, you know, that we did pick in previous stacks. I'm talking, first comes to my head, I think the king of all cosmic horror, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah, that would have been on my list if,
Automatic. We've already chosen Altered States. That would have been an automatic cosmic horror for me, really sort of exploring the depths of the inner mind, you know, the universally unknown of what happens in our brains and what drugs are and what it does to you.
Have we done The Mist?
Yes, we have done The Mist.
Yeah.
The Mist, another fantastic
That would have been mine.
cosmic horror
Yeah.
film.
10 Cloverfield we've also done.
Yep.
What's that? Yeah. It's just like
mean-
the fear of what's out there, in a kind of.
Yeah. I could,
All the
one could
Cloverfield
argue that.
movies count.
Both the
Yeah.
Cloverfield, yeah.
What? Oh, fuck. What is it called? Why did I just forget it? What's Scarlett
Communion.
Johansson as an alien?
Oh, Under the Skin?
Under the
Oh,
Skin.
yeah.
That was another one I wanted to pick. I remember looking at
That
that.
would have been dope. That would have been good.
Pick that one. Yeah. Those are, I think, are the biggest cosmic horror films that we've picked out. But I want to sort of gauge. I feel like cosmic horror is such a interesting topic that like we can sort of break down what it means to you guys and like how you define it. So like Chris, how would you define cosmic horror in your way? And like how did you pick films that were like perfect cosmic horror movies?
Yeah. So this was a really broad topic to cover, not only because horror is such a big genre all on its own, but also trying to tie it into something as vague but also specific as existentialism is quite a challenge. What I came to realize while I was pulling together my stack is that whether it's personal, societal, or extraterrestrial, practically any film that forces someone to grapple with kind of like the horrifying malleability of the nature of reality and our understanding of it can kind of qualify for this.
Absolutely.
So, like you said, Ethan, there's that kind of like, there are certain elements I'm really looking for here, like the foreboding sense of dread, that looming thought of the incomprehensible, like that feeling of the sublime, which we've talked about many times before. So for this topic, I'm less focused on horror as a genre, but more on the use of existentialism as a theme and horror as a mode to deliver it, if that makes any sense.
Right.
So I divided my stack into three categories, which is personal, societal, and extraterrestrial existential horror, or cosmic horror, if you will. So that's kind of how I navigated that. How about you, Brandon? Did you have a specific style or something that you were looking for?
Yeah. So for mine, I kind of wanted to start out like the least Lovecraftian almost. It is still Lovecraftian in a sense, but something that's a little bit more accessible. And then as my stack goes on, you dip more into the deep, dark facets of what Lovecraftian horror could be. Which leads to the ultimate Lovecraftian film, which, by the way, it's a cosmic horror film that I don't even like that much, but I find to be the quintessential cosmic horror film. So when we'll get there, we'll get there.
Interesting. Yeah, I sort of broke it down as I did sort of cosmic horror of my first film was the imperceivable, talking about the undescribable element of cosmic horror, which I think is what sort of people think about the most when they think about it, is like these big things that you can't even imagine and fathom, but this film sort of explores like things that you can't even perceive that exist in our reality. Then my second film sort of breaks down I would call this technological cosmic horror, where it's like I think that can also go into societal, where it's like where technology sort of scares us because of how advanced it can get. I think that can also be perceived as cosmic horror, because we don't know how far we can go, and sometimes when something is so, I think cosmic horror is also when we encounter something so advanced that it scares us. I think technology can do the same thing. And then I sort of, for my last one, took a more natural stance, where it's like the sublime of the natural world can make us feel existentially helpless beneath it all. It's not, it's a bit fantastical, of course, but it still talks about our place in this world, in this ecosystem. I'll get more into it later. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun episode. Lots of cool discussions. I feel like we might get a little philosophical here, and it's always a good time when we do. So before we get into our movies, of course, let's run down the rules of the show. Once a week, set a topic or theme to go our separate ways and can construct our own 3-film stack. Then after a week, we come back here on the podcast and share our own stacks, one film at a time. Then at the end of the show, we will make a holy fuck, why am I messing up so much? Then at the end of the show, we will mix and match our 9 films to make the ultimate decision what quintessential 3-film stack we're checking out this hypothetical video store. Here's why I'm messing up so much. I'm using
painful.
That was very painful. Here's why. I'm using a different laptop to read my notes off of. I'm usually using my MacBook Air, but I'm using my work laptop because my MacBook Air fucking sucks, and that's why I need to buy a new charger for it because I can't charge it anymore. So it's just gonna die. It would die in like the first 10 minutes of recording the show.
Somebody's making excuses.
And this one, the font is a lot bigger, so I'm not used to it. All right, so I was caught up in the text. Usually it's like a muscle memory, just reading off the lines. But right now, I'm just all over the place. Anyways, let's get into our picks. Chris, you were up first with your first cosmic horror movie. What is it? Let's get into it.
Awesome. So my first film is from a favorite director of the three of ours. It's a 2013 film directed by Denis Villeneuve. I'm picking Enemy.
Ooh,
good pick.
That is a great one.
Okay.
Yeah, tell us about it.
All right. So Enemy follows Jake Gyllenhaal, who plays this kind of really mild-mannered college professor, who discovers a lookalike, kind of following him around. And he starts delving into this mystery of what's going on here, and that kind of forces him to come to grapple with his own sense of identity, but also just grapple with his. And when I say grapple with own sense of identity, I'm also diving into, identity theory and also just like simple existential. I say simple existential as though it's ever that simple. Existential thought and and I find this to be a really fascinating film. I do think it's one of Villeneuve's more elusive films. Definitely one of the ones, especially compared to his more contemporary work, where the meaning is kind of shrouded behind its surface. I do think a lot of his modern films, especially say Dune or Sicario, which are very accessible and easy to follow. But you have Blade Runner 2049 and Arrival, which are sophisticated in the sense, but doesn't need an overwhelming amount of digging to derive meaning out of. But Enemy is a little bit more, is a bit more of a challenge to engage with because its meaning is kind of hidden behind what is a pretty straightforward story. I remember when I first saw this, the spider imagery not only really creeped me out, but also it was one of those things where I couldn't help but look at it, and I felt almost terrified of it. I think where this movie works for me in the scheme of cosmic horror and existential horror is the way that it navigates that personal touch that kind of comes into play once you start delving into these ideas. I feel like with cosmic and existential horror, it's easy to immediately label it as something that involves these giant monsters that loom over us from above and whatnot, which this film does have in the sense of the spiders, but it's much more internal, which is why I found this to be a really great pick for my personal category. Both of you have seen Enemy. Brandon, I think you're the biggest fan of this one compared to among the three of us. That's my guess.
I'm gonna give it 3.5. So
I give it 4.
I give it 4. All right, never mind. You're actually the least one to it.
So what do you think?
Okay, but yeah, nonetheless, I want to hear what you think, Brandon.
I really like Enemy. I don't think the weakest Villeneuve film is actually Sicario, which is his least cosmic horror if you think about it.
Definitely, it's his most direct and grounded.
Unless you want to look at
I think Polytechnique is his most grounded, but
that's true. Yeah. It's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that one is. It feels very on the ground. Anyway,
yeah.
Of his popular films, we shall say.
Yeah.
But I do like Enemy quite a bit. I think it's a very interesting expose into the personal lives of a man, because it's his wants and desires. It doesn't really explicitly state anything for its audience. Mm-hmm. And I know a few people who, when they watched this movie, they actually didn't like where the film went, particularly because it wasn't clear enough, and the ending just made them go, what? And sometimes that's the best feeling to have when you come out of a movie, because then it sticks with you for hours and days, and then you can kind of perseverate on the messages and little things that the movie does, and it creates more of a social conversation for people to have about the movie. And I think Enemy does that really well, and it's a very small and personal film too. It's intimate and epic at the same time in that
Yeah.
sense. So I like it.
I think it's really I think it's a great pick for Cosmic Horror. That one that I didn't even think of, if I'm going to be honest.
Me neither.
But I think it goes a lot into the psychology of the situation here. It is a very small scale personal story, but sort of the cosmic craziness of it all, of experiencing this event, of being like, wait, this guy is my exact doppelganger. Like, imagine if you just discovered that one day, that there has been someone living a life that looks like they have the same birthmarks and everything. They look exactly like you. That would be kind of that would be kind of crazy. And that sort of draws into like sort of the madness factor that I think is sort of essential to cosmic horror, of somehow losing, because cosmic horror, I feel like it has to have a power over your own psyche, Your psyche has to feel powerless in face of it, and that in turn you turn to madness, So we start to see Jake Gyllenhaal's character sort of fall apart when he's sort of coming to terms of meeting his doppelganger and sort of having them figure out why this is and what happened, and sort of like then what the doppelganger does in turn. And it's just sprinkled throughout, like with that spider imagery, which creates a crazy final shot that comes out of nowhere.
Oh my god, dude!
That I still can't comprehend to this day. Like what do you take of that final shot, Chris? Well, let's just spoil it. Like, the wife walks into the room, and you think Jake Gyllenhaal is going to be in the room, but it's a giant spider, and it like scurries back, and that's the last shot.
I don't know. This movie has eluded me for so long. It's really hard for me to dissect. But if I had to guess, I feel like the spiders throughout the film are like manifestations of Gyllenhaal's like psyche. And I wonder like if that final image is meant to elicit like a sense of fear and anxiety, or like just, I don't know. It's definitely something that like has eluded me for so long, and I've had trouble dissecting this movie because so much of that spider imagery comes and goes and makes appearances in very different ways. So it's hard for me to nail down an exact like meaning to it. I don't suppose either of you have an impression of what it could mean in the larger scheme of the story.
Well, so the spiders in the movie, for the majority of the movie, they appear in Jake Gyllenhaal's dreams, right? So the last shot
and
is
they're
the first
massive.
Time. They're massive. And this is the first time that one of those big spiders is actually perceived by someone else, And I think it's sort of trying to borderline like spiders as a representation of like existence versus experience, if that makes any sense. Like, if it is perceived, then it exists, and that is something it sort of plays with this doppelganger. If it can be thought of, then it exists. I don't know, because he dreams about these giant spiders, and he's going through this crazy life-altering situation by encountering someone who looks exactly like him. And then it's sort of saying the bridge between the impossible and the possible is sort of blurred by this situation. And by the end of the film, his dreams and reality some sort of cross, I don't know.
That's the thing. It's hard to nail down because I don't even think Villeneuve has given an official like answer to this question. Nor do I think he should, because I think the elusiveness of it is kind of the magic of this movie.
Yeah.
I think it's the lack of trust one can have for somebody else. Frankly,
I can see that, especially with his wife's character. And
how like somebody can feel like they're being crushed in like a sort of by a situation, by stress, and how that creates that lack of trust. And then if you're viewing it from like a sexual perspective, like a fear, based on like what happens to him throughout the movie, fear of commitment, maybe that's how I'm reading it. But I
like it because trust issues and like issues with his wife is a big point of the narrative, you know?
Right. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's my first film.
Alrighty. Good first pick. All right, I'm up next. I am picking a film. I feel like this is my most conventionally cosmic horror film. It's not like a classic. I would say it's a cult classic. It's directed by Stuart Gordon, who has done films like Reanimator. You know, that one's a popular 80s horror film. This is from 1986. It's called From Beyond. Have either of you two heard of the movie From Beyond? I'm sure you've seen the poster.
No, but I think isn't like a neon-esque poster. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, From Beyond. It's the poster. If you've seen like a guy's face and he's going, and his face is being stretched out.
Oh yeah.
That's what this is.
Ooh.
So basically, From Beyond, it's a movie about these two doctors, and they create this device where once you step into this magnetic field, you're basically able to perceive matter that our eyes usually aren't able to perceive, you know?
Right. Oh.
So they're able to see this new dimension to our world. And within this dimension are like these little like squiggly like squid things that are flying around, you know? And something goes wrong. One of the scientists quote unquote dies, and the other scientist is blamed for it and is charged for murder. But then as the film starts to unravel, you start to see that the first scientist didn't really die, but he sort of was like he was attacked by these life forms and has now his matter is being altered, and he is now like he's only able to be viewed on the spectrum in the machine, and he starts to become like this crazy monstrosity body horror like creature where it seems like in the madness of experiencing this, like I think this is another big point of cosmic horror. He has to come to terms with his own sexuality, and his sexual side becomes a bit more exaggerated. So I can't remember who. I think the woman character is a reporter, if I remember correctly, but she comes with the doctor to experience this, and then she sort of falls victims to this guy's his attacks from like this other dimension. And it's just this whole film exploring like the depths of, there are things that our human eye literally can't perceive. We can measure it, you know, through radio waves and stuff, you know, like we can tell that it's there, but we can't see it, which is like that is a concept that does like blow my mind. And this is what sort of delves into it, and like what would happen to us if we were to come to face, like if the things that we can't perceive are things that are alive, you know, and feed off us and energy, and our own mental energy and desires. I haven't seen this film in quite a bit, but I remember it's got great body horror in it, you know, very good makeup and effects to make this character look disgusting. It's like it's not on par with The Thing, but it's a little bit below in terms of its effects, you know. My review for it when I watched it 2 years ago, I just said this is a very gooey movie. There's lots of goo in this movie, you know.
You love this, like this and like greasy strength. You got a thing for like texture in movies.
I do. It's just like I love slimy, gross, like freakish things, because I just think it's like I don't know. It's so creative when filmmakers like play with like texture, if that makes sense. You know, like when they really add texture, I think that makes something more believable and real. When it's not just a character in a rubber monster suit, you know? When they add like roughness or like slimy ooziness to like a costume, I think it makes it all the more tangible, you know, when you're watching it. And I think just goo and ooze is just something that's just gross. So horror uses it a lot, you know? A lot of gross, gooey movies. Makes me squeamish. But From Beyond, that is my first film. Have any of you guys heard about From Beyond, or I don't know?
Just seen images.
Yeah. I would definitely recommend it. It's pretty much, I would say it's quintessential, you know, there is a real, I think I talked about this last episode, where like 80s filmmakers really tried to flex as hard as they could when it came to you know, practical effects, makeup, and sort of that sort of area. I talked about it in Killer Clowns from Outer Space and Basket Case, where it's like they were able to, no matter the budget, deliver on things like this. I think this is one of the most important of those films because it does really bank on this being a really transformative body film, because when our body matter sort of interacts with the matter of another world, it could change, you know, because we don't know how physics work in that other dimension. So,
Right.
Really cool movie. Highly suggest it. Alrighty, that's my first pick. Brandon, let's get into you, dude. It's your first cosmic horror movie.
Yes, so I'm gonna highlight a film that I think is kind of like an introductory to cosmic horror. It's not that far out there, and some may even struggle to call it cosmic horror. I don't think so personally, and I'll make my argument in a second. I'm picking a 2017 film from Daniel Espinosa. I'm picking Life.
Life. Oh, wait. I've seen this.
Ooh.
Wait, have I seen this?
I have not seen Life, but
No, I have not seen this, no.
But I know what you're talking about, and I think this is cosmic horror, but I'll let you take it away.
All right. So everybody who's seen this movie probably thinks, oh, it's like sci-fi horror, it's alien horror, but I wouldn't say it's like cosmic. But the thing is cosmic horror is very much the unknowable. Cosmic dread. Not only does it take place in space, which doesn't qualify necessarily for cosmic horror, but I think the film deals with scientific examination of something, of life, something that human beings try to understand so much, but can only know so much of because of science and biology being different, especially space biology. We know a lot about Earth biology, but there's only so much we can know about what's out there beyond our little rock in space. And this film, while on its surface more of an action thriller, is also like an examination of human beings' search and quest for knowledge, biting them in the butt, and having this multi-celled organism that they really don't know a ton about, that they're studying, turn out to try and attack them and take over their bodies like a parasite would. And I think that's like part of the most fascinating thing about this movie. And yeah, I think it works extremely well. I don't know, Ethan, I know you haven't seen the movie, but I feel like it was really forgotten about when it came out, and it's an original science fiction film. I don't think it's based on anything. So I don't know why it was forgotten, because I think it's a pretty good movie.
No, I don't think it is based on anything, but do you remember that? So this was made by Sony Pictures, I remember. Do you remember that people thought this was going to be a prequel to Venom? And
yeah, I remember.
Oh, this is what's going to lead up to Venom, you know?
Yeah,
because it's
or
like
it's going to be another Cloverfield movie.
It looks like a symbiote, and he's going to crash, and it's going to be Venom. No, but I do think that this falls into cosmic horror because it is a being of matter in which we don't understand, that is unnatural to creatures on our own world's matter, you know? And that's something that's so foreign and unknown to us that is in itself terrifying. I didn't see this movie because I just heard I didn't hear great things about it. But I mean, it seems like it's got a little bit warmer of a reception. So, like people like it. It's directed by the dude who made Morbius. You know, yeah, you gave it a good review. So maybe I gotta give it a shot. You know, because there's very few good original science fiction in theaters these days. You know. Like science fiction is either adapted from something or it's like big franchise superhero, you know. But you don't get something truly original sci-fi until like, you know, like an Ad Astra or you know.
Might I add?
If this is on the par of Ad Astra, but yeah, what?
Not really. But might I add that 2 of our first 3 picks have a star in common. Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jake Gyllenhaal. He loves cosmic horror. Which is why I'm picking Far From Home.
Chris, do you have anything?
Honestly, no. I don't know much, if anything, about this movie. I didn't even know that there was like a misconception that this movie was going to be a prequel to Venom, which I find hilarious. That man, they'll Marvelites will pull a Easter egg out of anywhere.
Yeah. I think it was because of the Cloverfield thing that happened with 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Honestly, maybe
they were like
surprise connections,
and I was like, there's more likelihood this is going to be a Cloverfield movie, and it was just neither. It was just an original science fiction movie that dealt with horror and stuff. It was cool.
Yeah. Sometimes mystery will do that to people. They'll be trying, you know, and that sort of goes into cosmic horror. There's like it's people trying so hard in the face of mystery to search for answers when sometimes there isn't. You know, and that's what makes cosmic horror so scary. Alrighty, let's go into the second round here. Chris, what is your second cosmic horror film?
Cool. All right, my second cosmic horror film is a movie. I believe I watched this, for the first time earlier this year. Neither of you have seen this movie. It's not even in your watch list. It is a 2016 South Korean film directed by Na Hong Jin. It's The Wailing.
The Wailing.
The Wailing. Yeah. This movie is spooky as hell. Would recommend if you Ethan. I know you've been trying to hit all the great horror films of
going deep into horror. Yeah.
So this is a pretty solid one. So The Wailing follows a little village in rural South Korea that is visited by a mysterious stranger. And in that same timeline, a sickness starts to spread among the population. And there is, on top of that, there are bodies being found and all these like unusual things for this typically very quiet and peaceful village is happening. This movie is a huge slow burn that crescendos incredibly well. It's very compelling. The movie treads like this really interesting line between like supernatural and psychological horror, which kind of by the end of it, you kind of see how it transitions itself into kind of a larger question of what is and isn't real and stuff like that. I don't want to spoil too much. But the way that I interpreted this film is that it's a movie that has a lot more to do with like moral empathy through like these existential questions of what is and isn't going on here. I really find this movie fascinating. I think that's why I tied it into my societal cosmic horror in the sense of like not being able to comprehend what is happening around you in the sense of your community and whatnot. It's a really fascinating movie in the sense of what it goes for in like in its depiction of this little town and how the way that it shifts during the events of this film, and how that affects even a singular person. I don't want to say too much more because this movie is definitely one of those films that, at least for me, works really well when you don't really know much of anything going in. One thing I will say is I do think this film is a little bit overstuffed. It is a very dense movie, and not everything in that density is absolutely required. But the execution of the film in both its themes and its storytelling is really well done. It brings a lot to the table, and I think it is. I honestly would rank this among some of the best South Korean films period. But that's just me.
Whoa.
South Korea has a high standard for films, especially as of late. But I really dig this one, and I think you guys would too. It's pretty great, at least in my opinion.
Never heard of it.
You never heard it? I never heard it either. I think I've heard of the title, The Wailing, but I never put like a poster to its title. At first, I thought it was like The Howling, I thought it was like
werewolves
or something or like a ghost, because it's wailing. But
right.
I like this sort of like it's again to me, I interpret like this for, I mean, not seen it, but it is like the horror of, which is something I feel like we had our own little cosmic horror of this 2 years ago when we did not comprehend COVID, and we were locked in this state of just dread of like what this sickness is doing to everybody, and madness certainly came of that, and this sounds really intriguing to me. This sounds like a film, friend of the show Harrison watched this movie and he said this is like one of those films where just like once it's over, you just gotta like, it's so satisfying to piece everything together once it's all said and done. And those are usually some of the best kind of films. So I added this to the watch list. It's on Tubi. I might check it out soon. What about you, Brandon?
I think you got nothing. He's speechless.
He's speechless? What are you doing?
Daddy's speechless.
Daddy's absolutely speechless.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I just don't know what to say about it. I don't even know what hint of an idea.
Well, that's good then. Because then you go in as blind as you can, What's going on with him? What is he doing? Oh, it's the children. There's children outside, wailing. Isn't there? There's wailing children. There's the loudest kids in this apartment complex, isn't it? Let's call them out in the podcast right now, Brandon.
These kids gotta shut up. I'm trying to watch movies. I'm trying to
sleep.
Do things.
They're yelling at 7 a.m. There's this one kid that cries every morning at 7 a.m. And I'm just like...
That's called being a child, though.
I know, but I'm just like, if you're going to cry, can you at least cry inside? Like, I'm trying to sleep. I don't need to hear that shit in the morning.
They don't get it. They don't get it.
They just don't get it.
Well, maybe they do. They realize existence is pain, so...
Yeah, maybe they watch The Wailing. All right.
Full circle.
Full circle. Good pick, Chris. It sounds really interesting.
Yep.
All right, let's go into mine. My next pick is probably I think, Brandon, this is what you thought I was talking about originally, because this movie also has Beyond in it. This is one of the two films directed by Pasmos Cosmatos, director of Mandy,
yeah.
Beyond the Black Rainbow. This is a movie where I'm not in love with this movie. I think its narrative is a little shallow. I think that's the problem with Pasmos. Most of Pasmos Cosmatos' films is like, I think for how rich his filmmaking is, I just think he needs a really engaging story to pair with his, to his style, his auteur style. Because I feel like once you see one of his films, you know it. Like if you see a frame, you know it's him. And Beyond the Black Rainbow is no different. This sort of this is my pick for sort of the unfallible in terms of technology, where it's about a girl who gets checked into like this this technological I guess it's like a therapy institute, but she starts to see that she's sort of held there captive by her therapist, this doctor, and starts to realize that she's not there for reasons for help, but it's a bit more malicious on his end. So the film is more about like her trying to escape, where she is somehow being able to be controlled by this this mysterious technology that he has over her, and she gets an opportunity to escape, so she does by trying to explore sort of what else is in this sort of institute, you know? And it's cosmic horror because there is no explanation to what is really going on here, you know, to why this thing exists, to why this technology works, you know? And it's scary because, I mean, you both have seen Mandy, right? Have you both seen Mandy?
I haven't seen Mandy.
Yeah, you haven't seen Mandy?
Yeah, I've seen it.
I think you would love this. Sort of, he has a really gritty and neon lit look to his films, you know, Brandon? Like, and I think this plays, like, his look plays better in here than it does Mandy, where I think Mandy's, like, the better story. This film just looks absolutely fantastic. If you look up any still of it, I am absolutely in love, and I just need this man to make more films.
Yeah.
You're sort of lost in, like, in sort of the thoughts of, like, the possibilities of technology in the future, when it comes to, like, our own psyche. Again, I think, you know, the mind is the most important part of cosmic horror, is the threat's relationship to the mind, you know? And
here's what I'd argue. You don't need a narrative to be a good Lovecraftian horror film in comparison to other films.
I honestly, I agree, you know, because Lovecraft is all about exploration of the mind through horror, you know? So this film sort of opens up to, like, how are we as a society sort of coming to terms with how rapid we are evolving technologically, you know? I feel like that's a big narrative in this film. And this main character sort of represents us and our fears about this. And this doctor sort of represents, like, how it is being used maliciously, you know? It is just a beautiful film, very thought-provoking. I wish there was a bit more substance for me to really fall in love with this film, because I feel like if there was, it would have been an all-timer for me. I highly recommend you guys could, like, check this out. Chris, I think you would eat this up in terms of cinematography.
Seems like it.
I just want to make a movie that looks like this. It looks so good. Just, like, it uses light and sort of light and noise, you know, grain, in such a powerful way that it's just like, oh, it just feels so right. The cinematography is, like, this is probably one of the best looking films I've ever seen, and I highly recommend you two both check it out.
I'll definitely look into it. This does seem like, I mean, I'm just looking at stills right now, and Jesus Christ, like, why is this movie hasn't been talked about once in my cinematography class? And I'm like,
I know,
geez,
right?
this looks beautiful. I'm just looking at even just like the banner head on Letterboxd. I'm just like, that. I mean, that's a painting right there.
I know.
If I ever saw one.
You heard it here first. Stacked's a better cinematography class than your cinematography class.
Honestly,
Hey.
probably. We got some of the best here. Got the best in the biz right here. Here in their takes. But yeah, it just looks... I think it's the closest a modern film has gotten to, like, really, like, 60s cinematography, 60s science fiction cinematography. It has that modern grit to it, but, like, that really satisfying 60s, 70s. I'm talking Kubrick, 2001, you know? There hasn't really been a film that has captured that sort of look outside of this. And it's so cool. Brandon, what do you think? Huh?
I like Mandy. I think it's a little dirty and grimy. His, like, from what I remember, you know, it's been a bit, but his films are definitely lit heavily with neon lights. However you like, that's cool. I don't really know what to make of, like, the plot. I don't know if I agree with Mandy being Lovecraftian horror. Same aesthetic as, like, common films, but I don't know about this one.
Metal. You know, it's more
Yeah.
fantastical metal.
Yeah, I don't think that fits, but I don't know about Beyond the Black Rainbow. I've seen the poster a lot of times, but I didn't love Mandy as much as everyone else did. I enjoyed it, but not my thing.
Yeah. It's a bit, I think it's a big ass, the stuff that happens in Mandy, you know? It certainly is its own thing. And I think I kind of want to rewatch it. Yeah, I don't know. Just this dude, he's making a short film in that Guillermo del Toro anthology series. But like, why hasn't this dude made more films outside of it? I don't fucking get it. He's only made 2 movies. So stupid. Anyways, Brandon, let's get into your other cosmic horror film, set number 2.
All right, so my second is a direct pull. I'm picking a 1994 film that I watched during my COVID hysteria 2 or 3 months ago. That was In the Mouth of Madness by John Carpenter.
Yeah, I knew you were going to pick this movie, so that's why I didn't include it in my stack, but I would have. I definitely would have.
So essentially, this is my favorite John Carpenter movie. I like it even more than The Thing. I told Ethan this, and he was like, "Wow, really? That's cool."
Yeah, I'm not mad because this movie's great. You know, I'm just like, huh. You know, that's great. Yeah, that's interesting. I like it.
Because this movie received mixed reviews on its release and has since garnered like a cool cult following. And the reason for that is I think it's really hard to make a film like this. It's super out there and it's a tough ask for its audience. Most cosmic horror is, but for me, that's what I find most intriguing about it. It's playing with the mind of the characters and thus playing with the mind of the viewer, making you question your own sanity, which, you know, Lovecraftian horror deals with madness as a concept and deals with like knowledge and how that can be harmful in some cases. And then it also has to deal with like legends and things that are like kind of supernatural and spooky that we can't necessarily easily solve or figure out. And that's the same place here, because the movie's about insurance investigator trying to figure out where he can get his hands on this author who wrote a book that is driving people crazy, for allowing them to like kill, or not allowing them, and compelling them to kill or hurt people across the country. So he tracks down this novelist, but falls into his own web of insanity rather, as he like stumbles into a fake town from the book. And it's super freaky, super interesting, and the way it plays with the frame of film as well as its form is as intriguing as how it plays with the central character's mental state as he uncovers more and more of the mystery. He never really fully gets it, I think.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the point.
Yeah. I think this is a fantastic film. I think this film has aged phenomenally, especially when it's talking about its theme of like, I think there is a narrative of blind fanaticism, you know, to like these people reading his books and that it driving them to madness, sort of parallels just like modern fandom and like, you know, parasocial relationships where like everyone always saying like the dude says before he murders like Sam Neill's character Sutter Kane, he's like, have you even ever read Sutter Kane? And then he goes to kill him with an axe, and you're just like, what the hell is going on here, you know? It just, I think it's an exploration of our mind and how we engage in literature and or media and film and storytelling, and how fucking crazy that is that we can sort of like, our brain has the ability to like make things come to life like that, even though none of it's real, but at the same time it can be real, because like what is real to begin with, you know? So it's a really fun exploration. It's just creepy as hell, the film. Once he starts to go like explore what's going on here. Once he goes into the church, that scene is amazing. Like when it's like revealed what's behind those doors. Oh my god. Like so awesome. And he dives into his own madness, you know?
Right.
Great film. I think it is. This and Assault on Precinct 13, I think, are John Carpenter's two most underrated films. Like, people need to talk about those two films more. Like,
I think, like you said, though, like this kind of parallels a lot of what's happening today.
yeah,
If you look at it, blind fanaticism in either politics, religion, or even if you look at social media and how people react to celebrity culture, and especially with like super controversial things coming out, not to harp on anything specific, but like Try Guys, Rex Orange County sexual assault, or you know, like things like that, where it's like people have one idea of a celebrity or one idea of something, because they've worshipped these people, and then when they find out in their private lives they're not as, you know, forthcoming or as amazing as you make them out to be, it can kind of cause a sense of madness for that person who created this world in their head. And it's very much the same here, you know? So I think it only gets better with age, unlike a lot of films.
Yeah, I think so too. Chris, have you ever heard of this film?
Not even a little bit. not even a word of it.
Ooh, it's so good.
It does look pretty cool.
If you love The Thing, you know, if you love John Carpenter, this is a hard film.
Not a lot.
Though.
Not a lot of monster elements to it, though.
Yeah.
There are
but
some.
when it's there. But when it's there,
but it's not about that, though. You know, it's like it just adds to the dread.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So
very exciting.
It's a really exciting film. This was one of the last I have seen all of Carpenter's films, and I remember this being one of the last ones, and I was just like so bummed when it was over, because I was like, the dude's never gonna make a film like this again. He wants to make more films. Someone give this man. I was thinking about this on the drive to work the other day. Give this man $50 million. Let him make whatever he wants, and just let's
Ethan,
just see it. What?
The reason you refuse to watch anybody's filmography is because of this movie.
Exactly. When I finished John Carpenter's filmography, I was so fucking pissed. I was like, well, that's it. I know the last John Carpenter movie I watched, you know what it was? I know the very last one. It was his Elvis movie that he made. He also made a 3-hour long Elvis movie. Kurt Russell is Elvis. I watched it on Halloween. I remember I watched it, and then right after that, we had our Halloween party, and I walked over to go celebrate with you guys. But yeah, crazy. I miss it. I miss that man so much. Let him make more movies. Everyone thought he was going to make a Godzilla movie, but he's just hosting like a Godzilla TV special, which is cool. He loves Godzilla. Apparently, he made a Godzilla short film that has never been released. People think he's going to release it soon, but we'll see. All right, let's get into the last round here. We're looking at like 50 minutes, so let's get her to it. Chris, what is your last Cosmic Horror?
My final film is a movie that I actually saw for the first time earlier this year, even though it came out in 2018. It's a film directed by none other than Alex Garland. I'm picking Annihilation.
Yep. I knew this film was going to show up. That's why I didn't put it on my list, but I am so excited to talk about it.
Yep. All right. So Annihilation, for anyone who doesn't know, follows a biologist played by Natalie Portman, who signs up for a dangerous expedition into a mysterious zone where the laws of nature don't apply. I'm, by the way, just so that no one calls me out for it, I'm reading the letterbox description for it.
Wow, you nailed it, man.
But Annihilation,
Hack.
yeah, okay. Annihilation is a pretty freaking dope movie. It's definitely one of those movies that I think can be a little alienating if you are not aware of what kind of movie you're jumping into.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of people that went into this movie when it first came out immediately were like, "Oh, like sci-fi action movie, hell yeah! Like let's see it. Let's see the monsters. Let's see the guns. Let's see this and that." But what you're treated to with Annihilation is this pretty interesting dissection of not only like this infinite power that we can't comprehend, but also it's all grounded by this story of of femininity, which actually is something that Alex Garland is seemingly very interested in, given that all three of his films deal with that on some level.
Yeah.
And whether or not you're into that, that's up to you. But in the context of this film, I think it works really well. I love how visually it marries like this kind of art house sci-fi genre into one, and it's really, really great. I do think it meanders a little bit at times. It loses itself in certain areas, but I do think it works very well. I love the way it navigates these kind of Lovecraftian horror pieces, and the monsters are very interesting. And I don't know, I think what really draws me back to thinking about this movie over and over again is the way in which each of the main characters, who are all women in this film, how their like backstory and trauma is made use of in the context of the story. Each character kind of has their own baggage that goes with them throughout it, and we kind of see how not only are they shaped by it, but reshaped by it once this metaphysical force comes to reckon with them. But yeah, more than that, it's just a really interesting film. I do think it loses itself at times, but more than anything, I think it is just nonetheless a very interesting and very original sci-fi film, which doesn't come, as we said before, doesn't come around very often nowadays. But yeah, you guys are also pretty hot on this movie. I actually think I am the least warm on it of the three of us. So I'll start with you, Brandon. What do you think of Annihilation?
I think this is a really good cosmic horror, very unknowable. It plays with the concept of outer space beings coming down, and I almost picked it, and like developing a sort of area where the human psyche has a hard time kind of understanding what it's going for, when it's actually just like trying to understand us in a way. And in doing that, it actually asks those characters to look introspectively into themselves and try to piece together what's going on. But also, if you look at the Oscar Isaac subplot, that has to do a lot with the madness of it all, of Lovecraftian horror, and how the unknown can sometimes drive you mad. And right. I really like the movie. I think Natalie Portman gives one of her better performances, more nuanced, very different for her. Tessa Thompson's really good in it. I need to rewatch it again. I remember really loving the visual style of this one, and I was really upset that it didn't do too well at the box office, and that people really didn't like it. It's another one of those situations like Mother, Blade Runner 2049, where the general public just wasn't ready for it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You, Ethan? Any thoughts on this one?
I adore this film, and I haven't seen it since theaters. I haven't seen it since I saw it at the AMC Downtown Disney. That's how long it's been, when there was an AMC
Jesus
at the
Christ.
Downtown Disney. I'm dying to rewatch it, but I think what stuck out to me the most about like why this film works so much is it's a film about processing. Each character is processing grief in their own way, and sort of it's a tale about not wanting to fight reality when you process grief, and where reality in this film is really nature. The film often asks you to talk about the good and bad intentions of nature, if there even is good and bad intentions of nature, if it's actively trying to fight against us, or is it just that is the way of things, and that's what something these characters have to come to terms with, is like things just, the universe just does, it just works, things that will be bad, that things that are bad will happen. This is very much also an allegory for cancer. I feel like this film, sort of how this thing that is found its way into the earth. It is twisting. It is contorting. It is, it is changing its own biology of our planet, and its inhabitants. It's sort of an exploration of these characters sort of coming to terms with that, and sort of grappling with the fears that it comes with, but also just like, that last scene of Natalie Portman is sort of like, kind of returns that these anxieties and fears are really all about coming to terms with yourself, and asking yourself, why is this true? Why am I having these thoughts? Which is that last scene, spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, where she finally does find the alien, and the alien sort of just is like this faceless.
Yeah, it's like you can't really comprehend its form. It's like a floating cloud
thing, but then it turns into like a humanoid thing without
it's
a
like
face.
A T-1000 or whatever.
Yeah, it looks like a
T-1000,
T-1000,
like a T-1000.
and then it's just literally doing everything that Portman does, like exactly what she does, and that's sort of like the sort of saying that like this fear that you have is not coming from nature, it's not coming from outside, it's coming from within. And the thing that you have to deal with, it's yourself,
Right.
Things are going to happen. That's the thing. The external thing doesn't create fear. It's yourself that's creating these fears and anxieties. And you see these fears and anxieties played off with the women in the film. They go against each other. They, it sort of reminds me of The Thing, when they're sort of like, they sort of have a paranoia of each other in the film. Once they get further and closer to this alien, and their madness starts to evolve, it's such a good film. Great body horror, it's in the trailer, the sign of that dude being opened up by like a tree vine, the bear, really cool. I'm so sad that this movie didn't do well at the box office. That goes into just like why aren't people watching? I know it's adapted from a book. Why aren't people watching original sci-fi, like sci-fi they haven't heard of? Because apparently my dad's a big fan of this book series, because Annihilation, I think it has 2 sequels. And I think Garland wanted to do the 2 sequels, but he's not going to now because nobody saw this movie. And my dad said those sequels are really good, just as good as the first. So like, what the hell? I want to see more of this, Yeah, great movie. Love it. All right, let's get into my last movie. I am getting into now what I talked about is sort of I think it's very similar to Annihilation. I was going back between this film and Annihilation for my last pick, of sort of the existential dread and helplessness in coming to face with the force of nature and the universe itself. This is a modern film, 2019, Robert Eggers. I'm talking about The Lighthouse Baby.
Hey, I didn't think of this one, but that's a really good one.
It's very.
Why you just spill your beans?
Fond of me lobster, are you? It's folk horror. It's maritime folk horror, but it's also cosmic horror because, these characters, they're lighthouse keepers. They're on the island, secluded during just the storms. The forces of nature are always fighting against them with the waves, the seagulls. It is not a good life, but they start to lose themselves in their own perception of reality as they continue their job here. And I haven't seen this film since theaters. I saw it with Brandon, and I remember we both came out. We saw it with Joey too, right? Was Joey with us?
He didn't like it.
He wasn't a fan, but Brandon and I were like, yo, that was sick. That was awesome. And it's just sort of, these characters losing themselves, coming to terms with nature, their minds, definitely their sexuality in this film. There's a very big, sexual reading of The Lighthouse that, a lot of people have broke down, and I think it's very good. And sort of all those things come together when thinking about the relationship between our mind and the universe. The inside, which is as inside as we can be, which is in our own brains, and the outside, which is just the forces of everything that happens in this world. And Pattinson's character, he is seen to try to fight and avoid things in his life. He was convicted of things, and he's sort of on the run, and that's why he got this job. And he tries to do that here too. But then by the end, he sort of gets, spoilers if you haven't seen this film, he gets his comeuppance. And I just remember that last shot of the lighthouse, of just him lying there with the seagull poking out his eye. The seagull that he was fucking with the whole movie, just poking out his eye, eating away his eyeball.
Nature wins.
Just spoke to me. Nature always wins. Nature always fucking wins, Such a good film. I know you boys have both seen it. Brand, you were there with me in the theater. What do you think?
I really like this movie. I find this is the kind of Lovecraftian horror that I can get behind most. Is if you're looking at a movie, you don't have to go full linear narrative, easily told, It doesn't have to be like a normal movie. But unlike something like a Panos Cosmos movie, it doesn't have to just be a visual feast either. You know what I mean? It can have a plot, and it has like a good mixture of that while also having good crumbs for your thematic exploration. The sexual reading is one thing, but you could also read into the man versus nature argument. You can read into man versus man. And then man versus self when you're driven insane by your isolated surroundings, even. Right. And I think all of that works extremely well here. Is it the most compelling film? I'd argue no. But I do think it has a lot to it. And as far as cosmic horror goes, it's great. And we love our cosmic horror creatures. There's one here.
There's one here. Yeah.
It's great.
I just say tentacles. I feel like tentacles are
quintessential.
They're quintessential for cosmic horror, and that's all I'll say. Tentacles. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I really dig this movie. This is definitely my favorite of Eggers' works. I think. Yeah, so I remember sitting down and watching this and like being just enamored by how the movie like paints this like portrait of Lovecraftian existential horror, but pairs it with this very like folklore kind of story. It's very sublime, and I know, Ethan, that's a very meaningful thing for you.
Yes.
And me as well. And Brandon, I'm sure that is for you as well. I mean, yeah, there's so much you can say that, this movie has been analyzed endlessly, and I feel like every time I revisit this film, even when I'm thinking about it, like a new interpretation of it enters my head. And also just gonna throw this out there, Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, not only hilarious together, but incredibly dramatic alongside one another. They balance each other so well in this film.
Yeah.
I think the film is it is so many different things that it can be overwhelming, but I do think that in a weird way, those different aspects to it kind of lend to that overwhelming horror that kind of actually enhances the existentialism that comes through once things kind of dial up to an 11 towards the end of this film. I think it's so original, it's so haunting, and this feels like one of those movies that like I would stumble across when I'm 9 years old and find it and just be haunted by this forever. And the imagery in this is fantastic. I love how well it sticks to Eggers' vision. I remember hearing that the first line on the first thing on the script for this film is, it says this film must be shot on black and white 35mm negative.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they handed that to the studio and the studio said yes is unbelievable, because the balls it takes to not only ask that but to demand it as part of what would make this film work is risky when pitching to a studio, and it fucking paid off because the movie rocks. Hella dig it.
I'm glad you brought up the humor, because this movie is like astonishingly and like staggeringly funny. You know,
It's so funny.
it's
For no reason.
so funny for no reason, because you're also just you're faced with like this dread, and it's so dour, but then there's like some really funny moments to it, which I just like. That just makes such a great experience, you know, when you're able to feel all these emotions while watching the film. It's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, alrighty, Brandon. Let's finish this.
I've got my ultimate pick. This is the ultimate Lovecraftian horror film, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think I don't really like this movie that much. Ethan doesn't really like this movie that much.
What?
We both gave it the same rating, 3 stars. It's a 2016 film, directed by Steven Kostansky and Jeremy Gillespie. It's Canadian. I'm picking The Void.
The Void.
This was the first film that I thought of when Ethan recommended this stack to me.
Yeah.
Oh, what the fuck?
Yes. Very intriguing posters, very intriguing marketing. It's about this guy who is like just like stuck in a hotel, or not a hotel, a hospital with like these cult members and like these creatures and aliens from outer space, and we don't know like what they are or where they came from or what this whole ritual is about, but you're forced to kind of escape and survive with all of these people, like these just normal people who are just caught in the middle of it all. And some are driven mad by it. Some are forced to question their own sense of reality. It's very scientific in that way because it's in a hospital, so it's dealing with like the physical layer outside. I don't know how to say it, but like the what is known, the aspect of what is known scientifically via the human body anatomy, kind of like what we were talking about with Annihilation in my first pick, Life, and then like going underneath that and finding a very disgusting interior. And I really liked it, and I think it's a gateway drug for weird indie horror films. It was only made for like $82,000, which is extremely impressive if you watch the movie. Like, so sure, the cinematography looks like kind of cheap, but like the effects and like what this film is doing are far from it. So I really thought this was a perfect choice for this little topic we had here.
You're right. You're absolutely right, because this deals with existential horror, societal horror with, you know, there's a cult in this movie, sort of monstrous horror, you know, because there's some cool little creatures in this film. That's all I'll say.
To put it lightly.
Yeah. I think Sellers told a great story about this film. If you go you know, to their page on Letterboxd, they sort of tell this really enchanting tale about this love story between John Carpenter's The Thing and John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13, and how this film really is the baby of those, where it explores sort of, you know, there's sort of the entrapment. You're trapped. There's forces coming at you. It's tense.
You don't know what they are.
You don't know what they are. You're just like, it's about like this dude wakes up in a hospital, and all of a sudden there's just these cult members here, you know, and then it just goes off from there. This movie is just frustratingly like narratively mediocre, you know, because it has so much going for it. The characters are just not that interesting at all, you know? But, I mean, Brandon, like you said, man, like, is Lovecraftian really about that? I don't know. I'd argue that you kind of need good characters to sort of face this unknown, you know? And I don't think this film really does that all that well. But yeah, you got other dimensions in this. You got monsters, you got tentacles, you got cults, you got You don't show Joey this film. Hospital horror. The movie takes place in a hospital. The whole movie does.
We should strap him in and just see what happens.
Yeah.
Is there birds in this? That'd be amazing.
I don't think Joey can watch any of these movies.
No. But really? Is he not a cosmic horror kind of fan?
I don't think so.
He loves Annihilation, though. He gave it 5.
Well. And does he like The Thing? I don't know.
I feel like he does like The Thing.
I kind of want to rewatch this movie. Now I'm curious, because there's just so many insanely good moments in this film. But that's all it really is. Like, good moments and images.
But that's what I'm saying.
I know, because everything else is so forgettable.
Because Lovecraftian horror,
is
especially
about creating that image. I know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's like Jinjuku or whatever. Jinjuku? What is it? The art style from old that we talk about all the time.
Junji Ito.
Junji Ito.
It's not an art style. It's just a guy. It's an artist.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that, like, it doesn't need, like, it's that incarnate, the concept incarnate.
Yeah, it's, oh man, I just it's one of those frustrating, like, if this was like a good movie, it would have been like a horror classic, bar none.
Yeah, I agree.
People would have celebrated forever, but it's just like
the story isn't.
The story is just not there, But if they gave these guys a better script, I'm sure they would have kicked it out of the park. And only $85,000. That's insane. Because like everything is so impressive. That just goes to show, like, it is so. I guess it is so cheap to create monsters, and like crazy cool gore effects practically. It's infinitely cheaper than visual effects, which doesn't make sense because one is real and one isn't. But if you think about it, it does, because like you're paying for so much more time, to be put into visual effects than to someone to create a puppet or makeup or a sculpture, And it's all the more tangible. That's what this film's really like. One of its theses is that like, this shit's scary because it's tangible, because we actually made this and it came to life, I don't know. It's Chris. Have you ever heard of this movie? I mean, you just saw its poster. It's pretty cool.
No, first time, and Jesus Christ, look at the letterbox thing, like that, like the poster is haunting, and that opening, and I mean, the what's the word? The banner image.
Yeah, that's like the cult member.
Yeah, like Jesus Christ, like that's just haunting to look at.
Yeah.
But intriguing. $85,000 was their budget.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I know short films that were made for more than that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Dang. Good for them.
Yeah. Needs to be seen to be believed.
You might be able to check it out on streaming.
I think it's on Vudu. Tubi.
Oh.
It's on Tubi.
Tubi. You don't even have to pay.
Steven Kostanski is also the director for Leprechaun Returns, apparently, Brandon.
A good movie. One of the better Leprechaun movies. And also Psycho Gorman, which I've heard is a very good movie from 2020, a good horror movie. That
I want to watch that really bad.
So this guy's a horror director in the indie sphere who knows his voice.
He knows his voice, and he apparently knows how to make good, cool, practical costumes.
That is true. Jesus, the kills in Leprechaun Returns are so good.
Really?
Yeah, they're actually kind of good.
Well, wouldn't have guessed, knowing how gave you COVID. Anyways,
what?
Let's break down. Oh, guys, this is gonna be so hard. Holy shit.
Blah blah blah. Cry
blah,
cry
blah,
cry.
Cry cry cry. Let's run down our films. Chris, what's your stack?
Cool. My films were Enemy, The Wailing, and Annihilation.
My films were From Beyond, Beyond the Black Rainbow, and Lighthouse. Brandon.
Mine are The Void, Life, and In the Mouth of Madness. Because I'm trying to drive Ethan mad.
Yeah, he's out of order. It's maddening. God damn. Okay.
That is the order I presented him in. What are you talking about?
Don't gaslight me. This isn't gaslighting movies. Fuck. Where? How do we even proceed with this? How do we
I think the
proceed?
Void.
You think the Void? I think
it.
I don't know. In the Mouth.
It
of
has
Madness.
everything, but it has everything that cosmic horror is incarnate.
It's just not that good. I don't know.
Yeah, it isn't that good, but does that mean we're gonna
Like,
ever
do
use
we
it
want-
again?
True. You might be right. I don't know. But what about In the Mouth of Madness? That's like literally Lovecraftian.
Yeah, but there's other stuff I could talk about.
I guess.
from them.
I guess.
Or we could do both. I don't care. It's fine. I'm just kidding. And I think the Lighthouse, just because like it's a much different version of it than the rest of the films.
Yeah.
And then I think we do something more grounded, like maybe the Wailing
Or Enemy.
or Enemy.
Enemy. I was about to say, if I had to put one forward, I'd honestly put Enemy on for mine.
What if I feel
Because
like
you have the personal. I think that personal thing is important.
yeah. I feel like we should go up in scale with our cosmic horror. Sort of start with Enemy, then go to the Lighthouse, where it's like it's still pretty condensed, but there is some fantastical elements to it, and then go out, with the Void, or I would also even argue Annihilation maybe with something just all out there,
Right.
But I think you make a good point, Brandon. Like the Void literally has everything. It checks off every thing on the checklist of cosmic horror, of what like we perceive it. It's got cults, madness, body horror, practical monsters, dimensions,
The unknown.
the unknown. It's just like
It just kind of
better. It just makes me so.
I'm just
mad.
saying.
Yeah.
It's the reason why it's like it's creepy and eerie, but it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't have to make sense because of what it is.
Yeah.
That's my argument here, is that Lovecraftian stuff doesn't have to make sense because it just is.
Yeah.
And if you're just watching it as a piece of art, I think it just fits it doesn't have to be good even. Like I know I gave it 3 stars too, Ethan.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of good here, but I also think there's like a lack of anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know.
It's hard to. It's a nothing movie, but it's also everything because it's like so original and unique.
Yeah. And maybe I got to give it another watch because of that.
I haven't watched in like 3 or 4
I haven't
years,
watched
so.
it since what? I think I watched this in freshman year. When did I watch this? Oh, I watched this before I had Letterboxd because I just marked it as watched. That's crazy. Yeah, this is like one of the first films I watched when I came to film school. I remember. That definitely means I need to rewatch it because I feel like I have grown as a movie watcher since my first semester freshman year. Sort of. Oh my god. All right. Let's wrap this up. I'm tired of this guy. Enemy, Lighthouse, The Void. Are we all chilling with that?
I'm chilling with that.
I'm in for that.
I think that's a good list. All right, let's run it off then. This is Stack's 3rd annual Halloween-thon Cosmic Horror Final Stack. Chris, what is our first film in this final stack?
Our first film is Denis Villeneuve's 2013 psychological drama/horror film, Enemy. An incredibly disturbing glimpse into the life of someone who is rattled by the sudden appearance of his doppelganger and the existential questions that come with that. Just a fantastic piece about identity. Highly recommend. Check it out.
And our next film is sort of one of the ultimate piece of cosmic horror in man versus nature and man versus man versus self, the mind versus the outside, told within folk horror lens. That is The Lighthouse. It's going to leave you feeling pretty existentially puny. It's going to have you feel like you're on a little rock against this massive wave ocean of crashing waves that is the universe and the dimension that we live in, the forces of nature. That's the Lighthouse Baby. Great ass movie. Check it out. Brandon, say those magic words, baby.
And our last film.
Yeah!
The Void, the ultimate cosmic horror feature. One that has everything in it that you would say is Lovecraftian, from madness to unknowable things to creatures to cults. It may not be good, but it's absolutely befitting of cosmic horror.
Oi, oi, oi. And that's our stack, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this really fun episode. I loved recording this. Cosmic horror is one of my favorite genres. I wish there was more of it, and I wish there was more good cosmic horror, because I feel like cosmic horror is a hard genre to tackle.
Hard genre.
You know, because you have to be so creative and also so smart with what you're trying to say. That's what makes a successful cosmic horror film. But I mean, we picked one that was just okay. And that just goes to show that we need more quintessential cosmic horror films out there, you know? So filmmakers, if you're listening, make more. Thank you all for listening to Stacked. We'll catch you on the next episode. Hey guys, check this out.
Gross.